No, there's no unique intro today. Instead, we're just gonna keep it casual with some light-hearted conversations. Hey, how's it going, man? Good? I hope so. You keep it up, brother. All right, so now, with that out of the way, it's time to talk about One Piece. So, there is a break week this week, and of course, you know exactly what we had to do here. We held some polls about upcoming events and just theories in general to see what the people think. What are the theories out there? What are the thoughts? So, this first poll, just kind of hopping right into it, it poses a very simple question. Will any more God Knights arrive in Elbaf to assist Emu, Saint Somers, and Saint Killingham? So this question is kind of interesting because I feel like a lot of people right now do believe that the God Knights need help. Of course, Emu, monster class villain. Can we even beat them in this arc? That is a big topic of debate. We can assume that Luffy and Loki are going to be Yonko-Emu's main opponents, but aside from them, we have a lot of Straw Hats left over. You know, we got Zoro, we got Sanji, we got Usopp, who still needs to put a good feat on the board. Jinbei is in reserve in case we need a good fighter, not a firefighter. And it's like, okay, like, what's going to happen here? You know, like, I just feel like this is one of the first arcs we've ever had where the Straw Hats heavily outnumber the villains. You could count the Nightmare Monsters on the villain side. You could count the Domiverse Giants, but those are really wishy-washy. You beat Killingham, boom, the Nightmares are gone. And then as far as the Domiverse Giants go, we still don't know how that ability fully works yet. Can we get them back on our side if we play Reversey? Could Luffy, I don't know, use his liberation powers and free them? So I'm hesitant to count those two. But aside from that, what I'm trying to say is that we outnumber these guys heavily. So could we see reinforcements of the army coming through for Emu? And here we have it. 31% say yes, they need backup and more God Knights will arrive. And we gotta remember that bringing them to Elbaf isn't hard at all. Yonko literally put her hand down on the ground and boom, Killingham and Somers were summoned here. Against their will, mind you, right? Somers was still getting dressed. Killingham didn't even know where to go. They were just poofed onto the island. So if Emu, Killingham, or Somers do need assistance, they could realistically just summoning jutsu the rest of the God Knights here. The main holdup about that, though, is that these God Knights might be busy. We know that the Holy Land currently is under siege. It is on fire. We don't know who's attacking it. Could be Dragon, could be Shanks, could be Blackbeard, or it could just be a different party altogether. But no matter who's attacking, at the end of the day, the Holy Land needs assistance as well. Emu's forces are spread thin. So can they even spare people to come here? That is the big question. I mean, hell, Emu came here to Elbaf to help the God Knights wrap up the situation. Shamrock, earlier on in the arc, was sent back home to deal with the fires in the Holy Land. So, in my opinion, while I do think Emu would love to summon more God Knights to Elbaf, I don't think they can. And of course, when you weigh Elbaf and the Holy Land on a scale, you gotta protect the motherland, especially because that is where Emu's real body is. That is where the Celestial Dragons are. So, I do not think any more God Knights will arrive in Elbaf, much to our chagrin. Because I think a lot of people right now, they want Shamrock on the island. Whether you think Shamrock can beat Loki or push back Luffy, I think people just want to see something from him. Because let's be so for real for a second. Oda, very foul, but he brought Shanks' twin brother into Elbaf, put him on the volume teaser trailer. He was all over the subways in Japan, just, oh, here comes Shamrock, Shanks' twin brother. And then he yanked him out of Elbaf in like 5 chapters. That is crazy. You know, Oda is the master of blue balling, and I just didn't think he'd do that. That is absurd. Like imagine being just a random civilian, you know, you're just walking around, you see the promo for the newest One Piece volume. Oh my god, it's Shamrock. You know, dude, go to the volume cover. Shamrock's drawing his blade. It looks like he's about to fight Luffy. And then in that very same volume, Shamrock goes home. Doesn't even really fight. And it's like, okay, I think people want more from him. And of course, he did talk mad smack to Loki. Loki said, hey, you know, you can only do this because I'm chained up. And Shamrock, you know, crazy to look back at this line. Was he capping or was he for real? But he did say that whether or not Loki was chained, the outcome would be the same. Brother, we're at the point in the story. Of course, we have not seen what Loki can do current day. We haven't seen what his hybrid form looks like or what his attacks really are, but people have Loki in their top 5, you know? It is crazy, but I understand it, man. So, of course, I think people just want more villains here so that we can fight more people, so that we can get more feats, not just for Loki, but for the Straw Hats as a whole. You know, we know that Zoro's gonna get a fight. We know that Sanji's gonna get a fight. Luffy's gonna get a fight. But what about everybody else? Robin had a really cool moment against St. Somers. Could we get that with other Straw Hats if more God Knights arrived? The answer is yes. So while I do not think that any more God Knights will arrive here in Elbaf, I understand the sentiment on why a lot of people want backup to show up. But of course, looking at the polls right here, only 31% actually believe that we will get them here. I mean, when it comes to the God Knights, we still have around 6 or 7, not even memeing, you know, there's around 6 or 7 God Knights we have not formally been introduced to yet. And hell, the God Knights we saw at God Valley might not even be God Knights that are still relevant today. Because you gotta remember, God Valley was 38 years ago. So this picture of the Man-Meyer girl I'm putting right here, she might not even still be around. For all we know, she could be a fossil, she could be dead. We have no real clue. And you know, going back to this Man-Meyer girl for a second, isn't it insane how Oda, I think she had like 4 or 5 panels all together, but in every single panel, even in the anime, of course, they hid her eyes. Brother, what kind of eyes does she have that Oda said, yo, I cannot show this? It's either 1, she's completely irrelevant, she's fodder, she doesn't matter, or 2, her eyes are gonna be insane. Which, just saying, but Yonko is of the Man-Meyer family. This girl is also Man-Meyer. Maybe she also has heterochromatic eyes. Did I pronounce that right? I don't know. But either way, right? Maybe she has insane eyes like Yonko. Maybe that'd be like a dead giveaway. Or maybe she has no eyes at all. That'd be kind of nuts. But yeah, it looks like no matter what God Knight we're really talking about, a vast majority of people, 69% of people, do not believe any of them anymore are coming to Elbaf. And that makes sense, right? Like I said, the Holy Land is in trouble. Whoever's over there has got to be an absolute unit. You know, Luffy and the gang here in Elbaf, that is a side quest. You know, if we beat Luffy here, if we get the Giants, that is great and dandy. But what does that matter if your home is destroyed? I think they're all going to be way too busy to actually show up and assist Imu and the gang. And hell, maybe Imu needs no backup at all. It's like what Geniru Yusei said in Bleach. I think I also butchered that name. But he said, hey, there's no greater defense than me. I am that guy. Maybe that is going to be Imu. They're going to go around, maybe they shadow clone jutsu and just start attacking everybody solo. That would be crazy. Or perhaps they level up St. Somers or St. Killingham and make them even stronger. You know, maybe he grants them extra abilities like, hey, St. Somers, you look kind of weak right now. Take some more of my magic. Killingham, buff up the nightmare monsters. Here you go. We are still theorizing about all of this in the early stages of the battle. Anything can change. I always say that. Theories can spawn and or die within a single chapter. That's all it really takes. So getting into the comment section, Top One just says, bro is dropping polls late AF. Hey, quick tidbit. I record these videos late as hell too. Right now, it is 3:51 a.m. I drop polls late, I make these videos super late. This says, people acting like the final boss isn't already there. That is true. You know, like I said, Imu could really just show out and be that guy. They don't need any reinforcements at all. But we gotta acknowledge that they are kind of nerfed right now. 1, they're in Gonko's body, and 2, Yonko is seemingly fighting back for control, or she doesn't want to be possessed. So the final boss is here, but they are most likely being nerfed, which, hey, if a nerfed final boss is enough, I'll take that too. When it comes to the God Knights, I hope they are those people, man. I really do. I need my boy Shamrock to finish cleaning up at Avengers HQ and get back over here and whoop Luffy's ass. Please, Oda. I need this upskill. Please, Oda, my agenda. I need you to save me. That's so funny, man. Yeah, I want to see something from Shamrock. I mean, hell, even Shanks, Mihawk, Akainu. Like there's still so many top tier characters in the story that we really haven't seen go all out yet on screen. You know, we've heard of feats. We can imagine these fights, but at the end of the day, it's like, man, I want to see something on paper though, brother. Shamrock, what can you do? I just need to know how Killingham does in this arc to see if they need backup. Yeah, I hope Killingham is that guy too. Of course, we haven't really seen him fight yet, but we've seen how strong his nightmare monsters actually are. And I think that right there is what makes me scared for Killingham in action. Because what if Killingham ends up being a sugar or a cracker type opponent where, yeah, they can spawn in these crazy monsters. They have such broken abilities, but at the end of the day, they are glass cannons. Like, they take a couple of hits and they're done. They're not used to fighting themselves because they command an entire army. I'm afraid Killingham might be like that, and this might just be a design thing, but Killingham wears the Celestial Dragon space helmet bubble, and we first heard that Celestial Dragons wear that because they do not want to breathe the same air as everybody else. What if Killingham is a germaphobe? That sounds like a One Piece thing. Like, you break the bubble, and then he starts freaking out. He's like, oh no, I can't breathe this air. Because right now, yes, while all the Celestial Dragons, the normal ones, have the helmet, Killingham is the only God Knight that does. So it's like, what if he's a germaphobe? You know, it sounds so quirky, it sounds so silly, that I can almost see it. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he does actually fight well. I hope his spear even is one of the 12 Supreme Grade blades. But who knows, brother? Who actually knows? This says, they're busy looking for lobsters for Celestial Dragons. Hey, burnt lobsters, because the Holy Land's on fire. Not only are they busy with the current situation at Marie Joie, Imu would most likely not want the possibility to lose more of them, since they seem to be tied to his Power Dash life force like a Horcrux. That is true. You know, I never even thought about this one, but that is correct. The minute Imu lost King Harold, he said, I'm not sending anybody else over there. I don't know what killed King Harold, and two, that took a lot out of me. So maybe after we lose St. Somers or St. Killingham, for example, or even Gunko, Ian was like, okay, we're not risking this anymore. I'm going back home. That is a really good idea. And another thing too, I've heard people floating around this idea and I really enjoy it, but people have been wondering what would happen if a God Knight dies at Marie Joie. You know, we're so worried about the things here in Elbaf, but if a God Knight kicks the bucket in Marie Joie, maybe that forces Emu to go home too. You know, just going back to like the whole Emu thing, right? We gotta nerf them somehow. You know, we can't just beat Emu here, and I doubt Emu's gonna kill the Straw Hats here too. So there's gotta be like something to diffuse this whole situation, and maybe that's it. Maybe the situation at Marie Joie just gets so bad that Emu does have to bounce out. This says, Emu will make Kid a God Knight when he washes ashore. Bye, Somers. Hello, Kid. God Knight Eustace Captain Kid, huh? I don't think he'd do it, man. Kid is stubborn. Like, Kid could have easily taken Kaido's flag. Apu did it. Of course, Apu was always working with Kaido. And then Hawkins did it. And Hawkins was like, yep, you know, this is for survival. It was either this or to end up like Eustace Kid. But Kid did not bend the knee. So I don't think he will, unless it's like forced onto him. You know, like they Domi Reversi'd Kid, which would be insane. Kid getting Domi Reversi'd. I don't know, man. Like, you bring Captain Kid into Elbaf just to Domi Reverse him, that'd be nasty. That'd just be so nasty, man. I don't know. Like, just imagine the Kid slander that would come out of that plot point. He already gets slandered to hell and back for losing to Shanks. But now just imagine he comes back as a mindless demon. Yeah, that's gonna be a rough week for Kid fans, man. I think that since Marie Joie is already under attack, it's highly likely that the current God Knights will have to go to their home fast, then they can spare more forces to Elbaf. Also, even though Luffy and Loki seem like undefeatable right now, it is highly likely the Straw Hats will have to face worse consequences than Sabaody if they fight full force Emu right now as well. And yeah, I generally agree with this. I mean, Emu is still that person, right? We saw what they did to Rocksteady Xebex very easily. So even though Luffy and Loki both have Conqueror's Haki, Emu can probably just tank most of their attacks and just be scot-free. Unless Luffy and Loki's Devil Fruits are just perfect counters. Because that also is a possibility. Like, yes, Emu can tank all the Conqueror Haki blows from God Valley, but against Sun God Nika, Emu just actually feels that damage. There's still so much mystery around Emu and their abilities as a whole, so anything is on the table right now. And yeah, I agree with this first part though, with Murray being under attack. There's no way they're going to be able to spare God Knights, unless it gets wrapped up off screen, which I can't see happening. So next things next, second poll of the day, is this kid from the Big Mom flashback and the masked celestial dragon from God Valley the same person? I've been talking about this, but I'm on my rewatch of One Piece yet again, and I got to Whole Cake, and I just got done with Big Mom's flashback. And of course, this kid was there. He was a part of the House of Lambs. And when we first saw this celestial dragon at God Valley, a lot of people were actually wondering, are they connected? Is this the same person? As you can tell, there are stark differences between the characters. One, the hair color is not the same. You know, the kid has red hair, this guy has green hair. And I think that could be the kill shot here, but we do have to remember that this is One Piece. Crazy things have happened, and I'm sure that there exists hair dye out there in the world of One Piece as well. I mean, hell, going to natural hair color changes, Denjiro, he had black hair in the Oden flashback, and then current day, it just turned blue out of rage. So maybe something similar happened here. He's like an unevolved Pokemon, and he evolves and boom, green hair. So I don't necessarily think that the hair would be a kill shot here, but if you want to use it as that, that's totally fine. I understand it. I mean, hell, aside from the hair color, the hairstyles are also different, right? This guy has like Obito Uchiha hair, and this is like Monet, right? You know, just look at this. So yeah, that's tough. And of course, the mask, while it does have a similar design, the colors are also different. You could say that, of course, you know, kind of like the hair, he just painted over it. He just upgraded a little bit as he moved up in the world. And that would make sense. But when it comes to the mask, we also have to remember that Oda typically does use this design for masked characters. People have pointed out that we've had, you know, these same goggles, the mouth hole and everything on other characters in the past, and even fodder, background characters too. So it's just really hard to say if it's the same person. The only thing that does line up well, in my opinion, would be the age. Of course, Big Mom was a kid here, and then at God Valley, Big Mom was more or less a grown woman. And the same is with this character, you know? If it was the same person, yeah, this would be their approximate age at God Valley. So now, the elephant in the room, but how the hell does a kid go from being an orphan to being this guy? Well, we do know that the House of Lambs was run by Mother Carmel, who was trafficking kids to the world government. She was selling kids to Cypher Pole. So there is a chance that maybe a celestial dragon or somebody at the Holy Land took a liking to this kid, and then, you know, within 30 years, boom, they became a Knight of God. Or maybe it's a similar situation as Gunko. Gunko, princess of a kingdom, something happened, boom, she's a God Knight now that doesn't have any of her memories. The possibility exists here too, because during the whole Mother Carmel flashback, one thing we learned about was that these kids, they come from a bunch of different backgrounds as a whole. One of the kids specifically was listed as a orphan prince of a nation. So it's like, yeah, maybe this is another prince, for example, or he has crazy lineage, and the Celestial Dragons took a fancy to it. There are ways to make this work. So now, one big hangup with this being the same person would, of course, be the end of the Big Mom flashback. Because she's invited to a birthday party, and, you know, she's over here eating all the food, she's having a great time, and then she opens her eyes, and everybody's gone. Two people witnessed the event. One was Streusen, and then the other was just the random Elbaf giant. And they were all shocked at what they just witnessed. Of course, it wasn't on screen, but we can imagine what happened, right? Big Mom ate her family. Everybody's dead. That is how she got the Soul no Mi. So this kid would be among the casualties. This kid should be inside Big Mom as we speak. The problem is that we don't know if there were any survivors outright. You know, that is one of the things with it being an off-screen event. Maybe this kid escaped. You know, Big Mom started eating people and this kid just took off to the woods. Because when it comes to the giant that saw the event, and when it comes to Streusen, they didn't really talk about if they're survivors or not. They just said that they witnessed something absurd. They saw something crazy, something disgusting. They didn't really talk about survivors. So for all we know, Oda could easily just say, oh yeah, one kid escaped. You know, one kid actually did survive the onslaught. And we know as well that there was a marine ship off the coast who was looking for these kids. Of course, Big Mom attacked them. Doubt they died, but, they were there. So there was a rescue party around the area. So this kid being picked up, it's not highly likely. I don't think he survived, but Oda can go back and just say, hey, here you go, one survivor. And, when it comes to why this would be a pretty fun idea, it would mainly be because it would be a great way to tie Big Mom back into the story. So maybe I'll hold this poll later, but I generally think that a lot of fans believe that Big Mom is still alive. Kaido, debatable, that's fine. But more or less, people are like, yeah, Big Mom's still around. She did say she'd come back and get revenge on Kid and Law, and she wants to get revenge on Luffy, so maybe she does come back EOS, end of story. But if that's the case, what is she gonna do? Is she gonna fight Imu? What's gonna happen here? And if this is the same person, maybe this could be a nice Big Mom fight. I doubt he's as strong as Big Mom, don't get me wrong. If this is the same person, I doubt he's gonna be over here clashing with Big Mom. But in terms of story, I think it'd be a lot of fun to have somebody who survived that event. Because Big Mom has no clue what happened that day. Big Mom refuses to face reality. Streusen has not told her that she ate Mother Carmel and all of her friends. So if this is the same person, imagine that conversation. Like, hey, Big Mom, you're a monster. I'm doing this to get revenge on you. Big Mom would say, wait, what? And then he's like, yeah, you don't remember? And then boom, we could have a nice little Big Mom, full circle moment. For a Big Mom, I think this would be a really good plot point. But let's be so for real. Does the fan base right now, nix Oda out of the equation. Does the fan base actually want Big Mom to get another flashback? Does the fan base actually want Big Mom to have time in the spotlight in the final saga? I think most people wouldn't. I personally would. Anything to prolong the series, flesh it out more, I'm a fan of it. So I could see it happening. I do think this is a really fun idea. And, Big Mom is a Conqueror's Haki user. You need Conqueror's Haki to beat the God Knights. Maybe this is a Big Mom matchup, That is another way to just bring her in. Yeah, she's on our side. Boom, fight this kid, done. So now, getting to what I would vote on. See, I love this plot point. If it is the same person, I think that is fantastic. But logic does dictate that this could just be a coincidence. I'm so 50-50 on this one. I want to believe, man. And, we gotta imagine, this was Whole Cake Island. This was God Valley. These two images are maybe just 300 chapters apart. If this kid was from the pre-time skip era, if this kid was in Syrup Village or, ooh, it's an Arlong Park background character, I wouldn't believe it. At that point, I'd be like, okay, that's a coincidence, too much time has passed. But these guys are within 200 to 300 chapters of each other. But also, it is factual that Oda does just use this mask design. I'm gonna say it's a coincidence. But I really hope that they're the same person. Just for the sake of bringing Big Mom back into the story and just having it be this nice revelation, I want it to be the same person. There are ways to make it work. He's the sole survivor. God Knights liked him. Maybe he's a prince from a kingdom. Boom, he's brainwashed like Gunko. God Knight. I want to believe, but I think it's a coincidence. And also, one more thing too, but I'm calling him a God Knight. That has not been confirmed. And I made sure to distinguish that right here. I called him a masked celestial. I didn't call him a God Knight. And that is because when Garling did that little pose with all the gang saying, oh, God Knights to me, rally, we didn't see this guy there. This guy was not rallied alongside Garling. So maybe at that point in time, he was God's steel like Gunko. Because in that flashback, Gunko was not lined up with Garling and the gang. She was off on the side doing her own thing and had her own little introduction panel as God Steel. So maybe this guy's the same way. Maybe Saint Somers even dies in Elbaph and this guy gets promoted. Then again, this was 38 years ago, so I like to imagine he got that promotion anyways, like Gunko, but we'll see this guy eventually. I do not think this guy is forgotten about. He will be relevant again at some point in time. Or hell, maybe he's defending the Holy Land right now, and, he's the guy that dies and brings Imu back to the island. But aside from that, look at how cool this guy looks, though. Gas mask aside, He uses dual katanas, man. We don't have a lot of dual swordsmen in One Piece, so this guy, you know, is kind of unique. And maybe he has like a poison devil fruit, kind of like an adjacent fruit to Magellan. Magellan is like the venom no mi. Maybe this guy's like the poison no mi. Poison swamp activate. Miyazaki style, who knows? Kind of going back to like my thoughts on this, I'm very like 50-50. And I think that is decently reflected in the poll results. Look at this. 44% believe they're the same person. 56 say it's a coincidence. So I think people also want to believe too, but yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see. This says, it's Barbell's little cousin, guys. Trust me, Oda told me himself. Look at this. Barbell fanboy 67. What did I spawn, dude? I created a monster. I feel like Dr. Frankenstein. I personally would prefer if no kids from BM flashback survived. But if these two characters are linked, maybe they're from the same country, dude. Imagine that. Yeah, a country where you just have respiratory issues. A country where the air is so polluted, everyone wears a mask. That'd be cursed. That'd be so cursed. Oda just happens to draw masks like that in the same way. Yep, and that's what I talked about too, right? This could just be a genuine coincidence. You know, I could have pulled up, I think, 2 or 3 more images of characters in One Piece with masks that I wouldn't say are 1-to-1, but are somewhat identical. Mother Carmel, giving those kids jobs and a loving home, it brings tears to my eyes. It's so funny that none of those kids ever realized that Mother Carmel was trafficking them too. Yeah, nobody ever realized that she was a bad person. Wasn't there also a CP0 agent that people thought was the kid? I believe, it might have been Guernica, because Guernica does have like the round eyes, but I didn't really see too much of this one. I think I know who you're talking about, and you know, it could just be because the circular eyes, but yeah, I don't know. I haven't really seen these theories floating around. The age could sort of match, but that would probably imply that if you're really good as a CP0 agent, you could become a Godblade. And that would imply the God Knight outscales Lucci. It could. You know, Lucci, he would make a good God steal. Like, let's be for real for a minute. I think he would. He is murderous. He does follow orders to a T. He'd even go as far to attack his own people for the order. So, yeah, Lucci as God's Blade, I'm down for it. But I feel like at this point, he might... I'm not saying he'd have a change of heart, but I feel like Kaku might pull him out of it. Honestly, how would a kid who we think got eaten by Big Mom be at God Valley as a celestial dragon? It doesn't add up unless this is a special tribe. I don't see any other relation. Yeah, he could be a special tribe kid. And like I said, you know, they do the same thing they did to Gunko, where they're like, hey, let's take this kid and turn them into a God Knight. Let's wipe away their memories, or maybe leave some of the Big Mom memories for revenge. And let's just bring him into our forces, brother. Different hairstyle, different color. Yep. I don't understand. We're choosing to pretend that Big Mom didn't eat that Torp straight up. I mean, come on, guys. You're telling me this orphan kid survived Big Mom and was recruited by the world government somehow as a toddler, then became so good at his job, he became a CP0 agent in which not even Rob Lucci was fit for until the time skip. I mean, like I said, we can skip CP0. You know, we could just say that like Gunko, because I doubt when Gunko was recruited into a God Knight, I doubt she had like really crazy abilities at that point in time. It sounded like Imu just took a liking to her. And I think the same could be said here if we wanted to run with this theory. You know, there are ways to make this work. So here we have it, the third poll of the night. But did Shanks and Loki actually fight 6 years ago? 38% say yes, they did have a brawl and it was a 1v1. 12% say that yes, they fought, but Shanks and the entire red hair crew fought Loki. And then 50% of people say that there was no battle. Kind of cool, look at this. It is an exact 50-50 split. 50% for battle, 50% for no battle. And I get it, right? I held a couple of Shanks versus Loki polls in the past, and I think people were pretty mixed about it because we saw what Loki was able to do to King Harold. And now that we have Loki's form, and now that we've seen how big it is, I think a lot of people are saying, oh, Shanks can't beat that. Which is pretty crazy, you know? We haven't really seen Shanks' upper limit current day or even 6 years ago. And same could be said for Loki current day. And it's like, dang, man. That just goes to show how much people are hyping up Loki's transformation, man. So, you know, I'm not going to beat the horse. We've talked about this a lot already. I think they did fight. I think they did. If you do not think that they fought, if you think Shanks cannot win, I can't even really argue against that. We don't really have a lot of facts in front of us right now. But with just how Loki's been portrayed, I don't blame people for thinking that Loki is that guy, that Shanks can't beat him, or, ooh, you know, they're both good people, so they shouldn't have fought. But for me, I just feel like there's no benefit to Loki being chained up. You know, there's no real benefit to making a deal outright. So maybe there was a deal, but that deal also entailed them fighting. Like, hey, get past me, Loki, then you can just go on your merry way. If you can't get past me, then you're not going to the Holy Land. You cannot fight the world government right now because we're waiting for the Sun God, brother, and it's not you. I met the Sun God, and it's a kid named Luffy. Maybe it's something like that. It could have been an honorable battle, but also we have to remember that Shanks is a pirate's pirate, so there is always a chance that he did something slightly underhanded. And also, I just want to say this one more time, but there isn't a definite answer out there yet. Until we get the flashback and we see what actually went down, anything is really possible. The story kind of leans towards Shanks actually beating Loki and bringing him back, but we do know that the King Harold thing was kind of flopped, right? Oh, Loki killed King Harold. Ooh, that didn't really happen. So the whole Shanks thing could also be blown out of proportion. We just really don't know. The only thing we do know for sure is that Loki does have a grudge against Shanks. So because of that, I do lean towards there actually being a fight. But like I said, I think that there was some sort of stipulation to the battle. There's some sort of, you know, ground agreement that they had because Shanks does visit Loki, right? We show up to Elbaph and they're like, hey, Loki, sorry we passed out, Loki's crew. And they're like, oh, yes, you know, we didn't expect Shanks to show up and talk to you, man. So I think there is a decent relationship there, but it might be like a, damn it, Shanks, I understand, but F you. I can't believe you did that. It's all just a big toss-up, and I don't blame people for believing one side or the other. I think there are good arguments on both ends of the stick. Getting right down to it, this says Shanks hired Barbell to take Loki out, which is why Loki calls Shanks a coward. Also, people have been using this line a lot. You know, like, oh, Loki called Shanks a coward. And that is true, but Loki does say right after that he's joking. You know, he's like, hey, whoa, calm down. I was just joking about that one. So it's like, yeah, I don't think he actually means that. I think he was just trying to get a reaction out of Luffy. You know, after Luffy said he knew Shanks, Loki smiled. He's like, oh, you know that guy, huh? He's a coward. And it's like, yeah, okay. He's just poking the bear. And then after Luffy fought back, he's like, whoa. Hold up. That was just a meme, man. Come on. Judging from the size of Loki's form, if there was a battle, there would be stories about it, or at least about the effects on the environment by the fight. And that is true. Also, one thing we have to remember is that because of this, you know, battle, people believe that this is why Shanks became an Emperor of the Sea. Because Shanks became an Emperor of the Sea 6 years ago, and that is when Shanks brought Loki back. So maybe there are stories of this battle out there, but we, dash the Straw Hats, just haven't heard about it. You know, and as far as like the island, maybe the island's gone, you know, maybe because the battle was so grand, the island just doesn't exist. Shanks snuck a sleeping Loki with sea stone chains. That's crazy. Shed light on my agenda. Shanks went to train with Mihawk to fight Loki. See, that's not bad, right? I think one thing about this that people, I would say kind of get hung up on is Shanks from 14 years ago. They're like, oh, you know, Loki beat King Harold. Shanks couldn't do it. But it's like, yeah, but that was also 14 years ago, right? Give Shanks 8 years, lock him in a cage, have him train. He's not going to be the same Shanks. Same could be said with Luffy. You know, Luffy, the lost at Sabaody. 2-year time skip, boom, Luffy is beating Pacifista in one hit. You know, he's over here beating Kizaru. So it's like, yeah, dude, I don't know, man. It's hard to count feats from 14 years ago against somebody 8 years later. So that's kind of where I'm at. And the same could be said for Loki, right? The Loki that we saw during the King Harold flashback, he got stronger. Shanks got stronger. The only person who got weaker was probably Scopper because he aged up. So yeah, it's a really tough one to really draw out. And then when you also add in the fact that we could just be getting a bad side of the story or like a bad retelling of it, anything is possible. You know, until the day we get this chapter, genuinely, either or could be right. You know, this is all just an opinion at the end of the day. This is like when someone in high school says, yeah, I beat so-and-so up a long time ago, and then it comes back to current day, and so-and-so says he never even met you. Or you reminded me of one of the best movies that has ever existed. Central Intelligence with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Kevin Hart. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson got beaten up in high school, bullied left and right. But then, guess what? He grew up, and now he's a monster. It could be like that. You know, Shanks could have been Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, brother. All I'm saying. I mean, same with Loki, too. I mean, hell, Loki, the size of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. The Red Hair Pirates kidnapped Ragnar and put sea stone cuffs on Loki. Okay, see, this is a pirate thing to do. I wouldn't hate this. I think some people might not like it because this isn't like a fair 1v1 chivalrous battle. But, you know, the Red Hair Pirates, man, you know, kidnapping Ragnar, holding a gun to his head, that'd be kind of interesting. Yeah, you know, they're like, hey, if we fight Loki, maybe we could beat him, but we're gonna have a lot of casualties, you know? Oh, we're gonna destroy this island. Why not just settle this a lot simpler, just beat Ragnar instead? Or maybe there was a battle, and then halfway in, Ragnar does get captured. That would be interesting. And of course, you know, when Loki is in his dragon form, Ragnar is vulnerable, man. You know, he's just a squirrel. Look. He's a squirrel just dancing on his head. So maybe Loki does care for him. You know, the one friend that Loki actually has. And he's like, okay, wait. I lost the battle. You know, I lost Ragnar. Let's just call it there. This says Clash Piece, which, if I'm being honest, if we do get this in a flashback, it might just be a clash, but we'll see. I think Shanks is really strong, but not strong enough to take out Loki without any visible scars. I think the whole crew, Scopper, and the Giants helped tie him down with Sea Stone. Not really a fight, but Loki trying to escape a trap. See, this is one thing too. People are saying that the Giants of Elbaf all helped Shanks. That is a separate event. To my understanding, Shanks beat Loki, or Shanks and his crew, and they brought him back to Elbaf. And then Loki tried to escape crucifixion. That is what they said specifically. And that is when all the Giants teamed up to take Loki down. So it sounds like the Loki battle happened multiple times, you know? It wasn't just Shanks, but later the Giants showed up. And Shanks, I'm assuming, wasn't there. But like I said, you know, anything can change, really, you know? It's hard to, like, gauge things off of rumors and, you know, these Giants sometimes, man. That is it for Loki versus Shanks. Time to go on to 2 more polls. Very arbitrary. We're not going to stay for too long. Which dragon design do you like more? No wrong answers, of course. This is really just personal opinion. I got Kaido and Loki in the ring. And surprise, surprise, people are a fan of Loki. You know, people might say this is recency bias. But at the end of the day, they are very different dragons. You know, Kaido is true and blue, an Eastern dragon, while Loki is a black, well, seemingly black Western dragon. So it does come down to that as well. And if I had to pick right now, I'd say Loki. You know, I gotta see what the official colors are, but I think Loki looks really cool. And I do like Western dragons more than Eastern ones. You know, being an Asian man, believe it or not, I have seen a lot of Eastern dragons in my day. Obviously, not real ones, but, you know, around my family, you know, around temples and stuff, like, these guys are everywhere. So I look at Kaido, I'm just like, you know, I want to play with the big dragon. You know, I want to play with this guy, man. Come on. So, as we can see, 43% still love Kaido's design, while only 57% actually like Loki. This says Loki has the new toy advantage right now. He does. And who knows how the advantage will go once we get that official coloring. The scale of Loki is so sick, but come on, Kaido's design is art. It's pretty good. You know, even as an Eastern dragon hater, it's not bad. Not bad. To me, Kaido looks way more detailed. Loki kind of looks like a background creature so far. I like both, though. We haven't even really seen Loki's design properly. Until I fully see Loki, I'm going to say Kaido. Love the detail and design. Oh, wow. So Loki won the poll. But as you can see, the comments are all swinging for Kaido, man. Hey, I don't blame him, dude. We had way more chapters of Kaido than Loki. We got to remember, man, Wano is the longest arc in all of One Piece. You know, we are Stockholm syndromed into liking this guy. When I think about my dad, sometimes I just think of Kaido. As you can tell, Loki does kind of have that new toy energy. But now, I also want to see hybrid forms too. Because, you know, while this is debatable, I think Loki's hybrid form would go a lot harder. Because Loki's going to have the dragon wings. Kaido did not have any wings at all. I don't even think he had the clouds, did he? Yeah, because he wasn't awakened. But even then, he should still have the clouds, since that's just a part of his Zoan. The cloak. No. Yeah, you could have easily given him flame clouds. And not have it be like an awakening kind of thing too, right? Yeah, like this right here. He could have had those just somewhere on him. But I guess Oda didn't want to make him awakened outright. Which, you know, people debate about that left and right too. I'm saying this right now, like, oh, Kaido's not awakened. I guarantee you, some people are going to pop out of the comment section and be like, wait a minute, so he was awakened. But yeah, he doesn't have any flame clouds. Damn. So anyways, getting back to it, as you can tell, people are loving both dragon designs across the board. My one thing is that I'm glad Loki, so far, doesn't look like the dragon in Punk Hazard. Brother, we have had the dragon in Punk Hazard for so long that I'm getting tired of him. I don't know, people might be saying, oh, but Sai, he was like 3 episodes, 3 chapters, whatever. But it's like, bro, I feel like in a lot of One Piece media and like One Piece video games, that dragon is everywhere, man. Maybe I'm just crazy, but I'm just like, thank God we just have a different dragon in One Piece, a different Western dragon. So now, last poll, of course, again, very subjective, but who is your favorite from the old generation? I held this poll back during the Rocks flashback, and Rocks won. Rocks won that poll, I would say almost in the same fashion as right now. And back then, a lot of people were saying, oh, but it's recency bias. This is Rocks' flashback. We're spending a lot of time with him right now. He's looking really good. And it's like, okay, we waited, I'd say like 4 or 5 months. So let's see, recency bias should have passed. We're now out of the Rocks era. We're now back in current day stuff. So I wanted to see if that would affect the polls at all. And it looks like it really didn't. Rocks is still number 1. Garp still number 2. Roger still number 3. Of course, we might get more from Roger later. We might get some more flashback from Scopper. But as it stands, when it comes to this, again, no right answer, right? This is up to your own preference, but all of these characters are so different that even if we get like a banger 10 out of 10 Roger flashback, a banger 10 out of 10 Monkey D. Garp flashback, I don't think the results would really change. Because at the end of the day, it's based on their personality, their goal, and their drive. And I feel like a lot of people just happen to resonate with Rocks D. Xebex. I think that's one of the main things as to why people are drawn to him. Because Rocks D. Xebex really just has a tragic tale. So, nothing's really going to change that. So if you just like that, you're just always going to be drawn to Rocks D. Xebex. And he is just kind of a maniac. Roger's not really like that at all. All of these characters are pretty different and they have different struggles and different motivations. So, even if we get like a nice Roger flashback, I don't think the needle will move all too much. But, that's just my take on it. As far as who I would pick, I'd pick Garp. Hey, what can I say, man? I love Garp, dude. I think his whole thing with the Marines, just him just running around with cannonballs, throwing his meteor fists. I think Garp is just a lot of fun. Outside of that, I am very empathetic and sympathetic towards Rocks D. Xebex's story, so I would go to him. Gold Roger, I feel like he needs more love, but like I said, even with like a banger flashback, I don't know if it would change too much. But either way, I do want more from Gold Roger. What could we actually get, though? What event in the past could we get from Roger? Maybe just like another retelling of him getting the poneglyphs with Scopper-Gabon's POV? Maybe like post-crew stuff? Like, oh, Scopper-Gabon visited him one time. I don't know. Because I feel like we hit all the main highlights for Gold Roger so far. We had like the sickness portion with Crocus. We had the whole thing at God Valley. We had him finding Laughtail. Maybe we get a Lodestar flashback. I think that would be good. Because we do know that the next island is most likely going to be Lodestar. So maybe we get there and Scopper, maybe he's not with us, but maybe before that, he gives us a telling of it. Like, oh, Roger's crew made it there. We saw this and this was Roger's reaction. He did this. He fought this guy. That would be good. That would be really good PR for Roger. And I think that might be the last chance. No. One more thing. We could either get a Lodestar flashback for Roger, or we could get Roger confronting Emu after they found out what happened during the Void Century. They came to a certain decision. Maybe we see Roger making that decision. Maybe he goes up there, he confronts Emu, he talks to him. Maybe he fights Garling even, and we call it there. That would be a good flashback. I think he definitely needs one more. Garp, I don't think he's getting any more flashbacks, I'm gonna be honest. No, actually, wait, Garp might have one. Yeah, Garp and Dragon. If we get a Dragon flashback, we'll see Garp there too. So there is room for Roger and Garp to grow. Davy, not so much. It's hard to get more from Rocks unless we hear about how him and Eris met. Like, oh, we get a Blackbeard flashback, and then Eris tells us about, the first time she saw Davy D. Xebex. That'd be cool. Yeah, there's still room for all of these guys to grow. Brass tacks, these characters are all vastly different. Stark contrast between all three of them. Aside from them just being heavy hitters, their personalities, motivations, everything is so different. So even with top tier flashbacks, I don't know if the needle would really move. That's just my opinion on it though. Let's get to the comment section and see what people are saying. This says Xebex has the advantage of being introduced recently, but still, I think he was such an amazing character. Yeah, the hard R, recency bias. I don't know, bro. Like, how long until we can't say that anymore? Like, after a year, 2 years, 3 years, until, like, another flashback happens? I feel like he's just a good character overall. Like, it's hard to find faults in Xebex's character. And if we're using recency bias for Xebex here, You could say that Roger's all about nostalgia, right? Oh, you're nostalgic about Roger then. I've seen people debating that left and right. And it's crazy because, at the end of the day, people are different. People like different things. Liking Davy D. Xebex is like liking the color black. Oh, but you like Roger? Oh, you like the color red. It's hard to change opinions on things like this. This says, it's rocks. He literally captured the entire community during a 6-month run. Only Garp is him. Since Oyaji is in here, my second favorite from that generation is definitely Xebex. Okay, I am curious. I have my phone notifications on. I saw a lot of people saying, where's Whitebeard? And I'm like, dang, like, is the Whitebeard fan base really showing out here? Like, maybe I hold another one in a couple of months and I just put Whitebeard as the 4th option. Who would Whitebeard steal votes from? From Xebex, from Roger, from Garp? That'd be kind of crazy to see, huh? Yeah, maybe next one I'll just throw Whitebeard in there, just see what happens. As soon as I saw Garp making 3 young Yonkos running, he's been undoubtedly my favorite out of the old generation. I love how he's basically a boogeyman for pirates, no weapons, as well, just straight hands. Yeah, Garp is a dog for real. Yeah, that's why I love Garp. What a cool character. Like, if I had to pick a mentor, I think I'd pick Garp. Just throwing it out there, man. I am a little bit biased towards them. Out of the 3, Rock seemed to be the most fun and entertaining for me to read, as he was so charismatic. Garp the Fist. Rocks has one of the coolest designs, and his character was fleshed out well in such a short period of time. Yeah, charismatic, dude. He was that guy. One of my favorite things out of Rocks was definitely when Kaido was like, hey, you want King Harold to join? You want the Devil Fruit? Let's just beat him up. And then Rock said, don't say that about King Harold. And it's like, whoa, I really like that. And then we even have the whole thing where like Rock's visited Elbaf so many times just to convince his friend to join. He really could have strong-armed him or just did something nasty, but he didn't. And I think that right there is my favorite aspect about Davy. Like, Xebex, I think it's just a great character. There's literally nothing about Xebex's character that I dislike, other than the fact that he looks like a spitting image of Blackbeard, but can't really help that, right? You can't really help that one. Father and son, father and son. The amount of Gold Roger slander I've seen in these past few months has been crazy. People calling him up for honor, forgetting that he's king of the pirates. These people act like he isn't the catalyst for the whole story, and he isn't going to play some huge role later on when we finally get to the One Piece. Yeah, he is the king of the pirates. He did find that treasure, but I don't know if anybody's really slandering him per se. I just think it's more so that people don't hold the same weight to that as others. Or yes, he is the king of the pirates, but at the end of the day, like, it's all just an opinion. Like, sometimes you're not always going for the king. Sometimes Joffrey Baratheon isn't your favorite character. It's like, oh, I like somebody else. It's like, well, but he's not the king though. It's like, yeah, it depends how you weigh different things. As far as power-wise, I don't see it. Roger is simply that guy. He's literally, in my opinion, he's so strong that Oda had to nerf him by giving him an incurable disease. Like, that is absurd. And Roger does hold the #1 bounty in the series. 5.5 billion berries. So, I think he is still that guy. I don't know if I'd necessarily call it slander. Granted, I'm not seeing things from your eyes, so maybe you're seeing people actually slandering him. But yeah, it's all dependent on how you value certain aspects of a character. Roger will always be my GOAT. There you go. Look at that. Roger defense coming right afterwards. When it comes to Roger, I'm trying to think. What is my favorite panel of Roger? I'd say if I had to pick one, it's not He Laughed. He Laughed, I think, is iconic, but it's not my favorite. My favorite is when he wanted to fight Odin. I think that right there is just like my #1 panel. Just, hey, I sense the presence of a beast. I gotta go. I think that's my favorite. I think that's the side of Roger I really enjoy, and I hope we get more of that. I hope we get more. But either way, that is it for today, guys. Let me know your thoughts on all these polls down below. We went over a lot, brother. We started with God Knights, and we ended with the Pirate King. Anyways, y'all, thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. Really freaking appreciate it. If you have the time, please be sure to check out my side channels right over here. Right over here. I got Psyduck, SRVDUCK. I post horror gameplay videos there all the time. And I also have Sonorous Reacts where I react to anime like JJK and Frieren and One Piece when it comes back. So yes, please check that out. I also have a Twitch channel over at Psyduck as well. So if you want to see me play horror games live, you can go check it out over there. But alas, that is it for today's video. Thank you guys again. Catch y'all later. Stay safe. And peace out, brothers.